So with the NBA regular season approaching, the playoff picture is becoming more and more clear, and the same could be said for the other side of the standings, with the worst team stacking up losses to try and get the best odds at a top pick. So for the top of the NBA, they have clear championship aspirations, while the bottom is still trying to find their next franchise player to start their rebuild. But what about teams in the middle of the standings? For most people, there's not a lot of hope for these teams, as media and fans mostly call this area in the standings no man's land, as the 7th seed to around the 11th seed, just missing the play-in, is the worst spot to be in the NBA for two reasons. The first reason being that they're not true title contenders as 8th or 7th seeds, meaning that they're going to be facing one of the top seeds, leading to early playoff exits. The second reason is these teams being at the end or out of the lottery when it comes to the NBA draft, and being unable to improve their talent immediately due to their inability to get projected top talent who gets picked at the top of the drafts. So with the odds of winning anything in the playoffs low or gaining a lot of value through the draft, most people write off the middle of the standings to be no man's land and be a tough place for teams to get out of, because of great teams at the top with up and coming teams making leaps each season, but also the bad teams at the bottom staying dysfunctional despite having opportunities to get highly talented prospects. But it's not necessarily bad to be in this situation, it really just depends on the roster. Bad situations to be in the middle is where your roster is on the decline with veterans, or a team that's already reached their peak, or sometimes it could be a team with a very big weakness that's hard to fix through trades or the draft. And even more problems that come with these teams in bad situations in the middle is that they don't have the cap space to make any meaningful signings in the offseason as well. An example like this would be the Sacramento Kings or the Phoenix Suns, who right now are limited in upgrading a veteran-heavy team that is also going to be on the decline for the next couple of years. Another team to include could be the Miami Heat, who's gotten a leap from Tyler Herro becoming an all-star this season, but with a stagnant Bam Adebayo for the past few years, the Heat are going to have to look for another star to play beside Herro and Bam to really be successful in the East. But this can prove to be difficult just because of their current salary cap situation, as well as their younger talent still having some concerns. Now good situations in the middle are teams with key players and younger talent improving, like the Atlanta Hawks, as recently their fortunes changed around the addition of Dyson Daniels being a top defender in the league, as well as Jalen Johnson improving to be a top option within their offense, and was having a really good season before getting hurt this year. Another team to mention is the Chicago Bulls, who quickly switched from a bad situation last season to a good situation, letting go of key players like DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, and Zach LaVine within the past year to give their younger players more opportunities to play, like their rookie Montes Vitalis, and players like Kobe White and Josh Giddey improving over the second half of the season since trading Zach LaVine. Another team to briefly mention is the Portland Trail Blazers, who's a 12th seed right now but has exceeded expectations as they moved from being the last team in the West last season with 21 wins to winning more than 30 games this season. A team like this can be looked at differently for not trying to tank or lose more games to give them a better chance at a higher pick. These types of seasons for these young teams, though, is necessary for them to build a winning mindset and good culture and identity to continue their improvement for seasons to come. And this is especially important for any player coming into the NBA to be surrounded by a good culture and system that can support these players to be possible stars. As we already seen many situations with star players being surrounded by a bad culture, with players that don't know how to win and a coaching staff who don't know how to utilize their players correctly. The most recent example of this is former number 1 pick Cade Cunningham, where the Pistons were the worst team in the NBA last season, only winning 14 games. Even though Cunningham played well last season overall, the real problem was the team around him, as most of his team consisted of younger players who haven't proven themselves yet, or who just weren't a good fit around Cunningham to be successful. So I think the Pistons' improvement this year is not necessarily just because of Cade Cunningham, but also because of the rest of the team, with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren improving in the interior, as well as Asar Thompson's improvement as a perimeter defender. And Jaden Ivey, who before getting injured was getting more efficient offensively. Their improvement didn't come just from player development, but also from the free agency, as they would sign veterans like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr. The trio brought a veteran presence as well as something that Cade Cunningham really needed in good spacing, which all three can provide as three-point shooters. In this case, for the Pistons, changing their coaching staff, front office, and most of their starters is a massive shift that isn't common. So creating the right culture for your core by being competitive in close games and learning how to win in the NBA is the most important thing for younger teams to get better in the future. So with the two situations I talked about earlier, there's still going to be some teams that are outliers that for one reason or another ended up in the middle. The first is usually going to be the 7th and 8th seeds in the West, currently occupied at this moment by the Timberwolves and the Clippers. And the key word in that is currently, because both teams are not too far from being the 5th seed if things go right for the next week, with the standings changing every day. So these teams in this area of the West could go down to the 7th or 8th spot, and it's just because of how talented the West is right now. But with the current teams I mentioned, in the Clippers and the Timberwolves, they are both teams that could still upset a top seed in the West. Though the outliers I have for the East are the Orlando Magic and the Toronto Raptors, mostly due to injuries they suffered throughout the season. The Magic started off well with starters missing, but have regressed as the season went on. Though most would assume with a healthy roster next season, they'll be back to where they were as a higher seed in the East. Though the big question for the Raptors is to where they would actually place if they were healthy throughout this season, with their core not being able to prove anything over the past year due to injuries. Though next season you'd expect their roster to improve not only due to their better health and an upgrade in Brandon Ingram, but mostly their young core getting lots of development from the increased opportunities this season. The last thing I quickly want to mention though is the talent coming in from the drafts over the last few years, and there's been plenty of talent across the board. Not only in the lottery, but outside of it as well. And though some of the stars we see today are top 5 picks, a good amount of them are also near the end of the lottery. Franchise players like Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell were all players who fell down in the draft, being drafted around the end of the lottery. And even if we're talking about the top of the NBA with the MVP award, the top 2 players in those discussions weren't even top 10 picks, as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was just outside the top 10 at 11th, as well as Jokic not even being drafted in the first round. So overall, with how deep these classes are becoming, as well as the improvement in team scouting and development, is going to get easier for teams to find talent drafting near the end of the lottery or even outside of it compared to decades prior. So talking about these teams in the middle of the pack, most have positive things going on for them at this point, and it's not as bad as the media and the fans make it out to be. For some of these teams in the middle, context matters, as the potential of some teams further out in the future are definitely brighter than people realize. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on the middle of the NBA right now. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.